Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a great day. It's Wednesday, all day, hump day, ripper. What we're going to go through today for the next half hour, 45 minutes is the process, basically the business life cycle from when you start, whether it's an existing business or something brand new, through to when you exit. The planning, the strategies, the mindset, the fact that there's going to be a wee bit of fear in there, a bit of excitement, all the really cool stuff about being in business. We're going to spend a bit of time having a chat about that. Okay. Now, at the end of the slides, obviously, there's my contact details. They're always there. That's so that if you wish, you can simply contact me directly. If you're watching this on recorded device, you can simply send me notes. Okay, email address, phone number, get in touch, and we can sort out some problems that you may be facing, come up with some strategies to help you become a little bit more successful, which is the name of the game. Anyway, happy days. Moving on. The business life cycle, from the audacious idea to the profitable exit. Now, right, just move the microphone a little closer. There we go. There we go. And we're rolling. Now, let's go through the beginning stage, right? This is when you've got a really cool idea and you're kind of mulling it around. You're not sure if it's really going to work. You haven't actually started all the planning. You're just going, what if? Okay, the big what if. And to be honest, if you haven't got a big what if, have a look around and find a problem that needs solving. Okay, so, because if you don't have a problem to solve, you're not in business. Simple as that. Now, this is where you really need, you're going to hit 5 big questions. Okay, will it work? Okay, it works now, but will it work for me? And that's particularly related to when you're buying out an existing business or you're looking at duplicating what somebody else is doing, just doing it better. Okay, how do you get started? I don't know how many times I've been asked that question, and it's a legit question, good question. Right? How do you manage the business? Because starting a business and managing a business, 2 different things, very, very different things. And what about protecting your ideas? Critical, okay? Critical stuff. So that's fine. These are the questions you need to work through when you're thinking about getting some traction and actually making it all happen, all right? Now, at this stage, right, you're going through all this, you'll have fear, you'll have excitement, you'll have some trepidation, you'll have a lot of self-doubt, okay? If you don't have self-doubt, then the idea is not big enough, simple as that. Now, don't panic, right? Chill, make it easy. That's normal, right? Seriously, if you're not going through that sort of emotional roller coaster, your idea is not big enough, or you're simply buying a job. You're just going to basically get an ABN and go out contracting, doing what you already do. Okay. This is a critical time. Okay. This is where you lay the foundations for the success of your business. This is where you get it right at the start. Okay. And I'm a big fan of starting the way you intend to continue. So given that as a mantra, it's a really cool idea if we get it right at the start, because we intend to continue getting it right. Okay. And this gets you also, as we go through those 5 questions, this gets you to the point where you can pull the trigger and actually launch, or you change direction, the pivot, as our tech bros love to say. Okay. And in terms of changing direction, it can just be a little tweak. It doesn't have to be a massive reinvention. It's not like you've come up with a better tire and suddenly you go into fish farming. It doesn't have to be something quite that dramatic. It may just be that the way the problem you were going to solve can be solved. You just found a different way of doing it than the way you originally envisaged. And that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. Perfectly normal. Okay. So, in there for a second. These are the 5 big questions you want to go through. And you really need to articulate and document your answers to these questions. Okay. And that is, the big, what are you doing? What's your big idea? What's the problem that you're solving? And I'll mention this again and again, and I'll mention it a lot tomorrow. If you want to tune in, we're going to run through some repeat business strategies. What's the problem you're solving? Because if you're not solving a problem, you're not in business, you've just got a job. Okay, it's as simple as that. And why? And this one's critical. Your reason for doing it. Okay, that will form the hub of your business. That'll be what guides everything you do. Okay, your culture, the whole thing. Who? Principles and structure. All right. pretty straightforward. Who's who in the zoo and what sort of structures are you going to use to deliver your solutions? How? The mechanics of the business, okay? The stuff that actually goes through that structure and makes things happen, and the timelines from start to finish. And when I say finish, I mean exit, as in hasta la vista, baby. You're off to the next big idea. You're off to the beach. You're playing golf. You're going skiing. You're simply going to go on a winery tour of the world. It doesn't matter what your plans are for exit. And indeed, you may even not have the exit that you planned. Irrelevant. Plan your exit at the start. Set everything up geared towards that so that when you get out the door, it's nice and smooth. Okay, I don't know how many times, actually I do know, it's hundreds of times people are exiting out of their business. I've come in to help fund the purchaser or to help them with strategies to sell, and everything's pear-shaped because they're making a last-minute decision to get out, or they've been planning it for the last year instead of the last 20 years. So we've got to unwind structures, we've got to bring things in, we've got to change systems. It's not necessary, okay? And we'll talk again. They'll come up a bit later. But this is where you go through that, okay? And the truth is, you don't need the answers now. All right, don't panic. You don't have to know everything. You never have to know everything, but certainly at the start, you don't need the answers. All right, don't sweat it. All right, just make sure you've got those questions up there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so that when it comes time to doing your research, doing your homework, putting it together, you're answering the right questions. You're not going off down a rabbit hole somewhere, chasing something which really has no bearing on the successful execution of your ideas. All right, so lay them out. Don't worry about the answers. We'll get to the answers. All right, so that's the first phase. All right, and that can take, I mean, that may take you a week, it may take you a month, you may spend 2 years in that phase. It doesn't matter. If there's one thing I've learned over the last 30 odd years in business is that things will take the time they take. All right, if your planning takes 2 years before you start laying down the foundations for your business, then that's fine. It took 2 years, is what it is. Moving on, let's get on with it. If it takes you 2 weeks to go through those 5 questions and map it all out because that's where you're at, cool bananas. Let's get on with it. All right, takes what it takes. But now we're starting to do the research. We're starting to map out the structures and put them in place and the processes we need so we can actually launch this little idea and get on with life. So this is where we start looking at resources. We start building structure, okay? And this is where we start mapping out the answers to our 5 questions and bringing in people who can answer them for them because we haven't got all the answers, okay? Now, what's the gap in the market that you're filling? And you really actually need to research this pretty hard. Have a good hard look at your competitors, see and define why your solution is the better solution. Okay, it's as simple as that. And why? And like I said before, this is the big one. This is the core of everything you do. Okay, why are you the person to deliver the solution? Why are you doing this? Okay, and it's not. Business isn't easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it. There'd be no jobs. That'd be pretty sad. Okay, but it's a grind. Okay, it's not golf at 11 every day. All right, and lunch at 3. That's not how it rolls. Okay, it's a grind, and it can be a long-term grind. So you need to know why you're doing it. You need that serious motivation. You need to keep that in front of you. And as I say there, it also drives your business culture. Okay, it forms the hub of everything you do. It's how you measure performance. It's how you reward performance. It's why you get out of bed in the morning. It's how your store looks, whether it's an online store or a physical store. It's everything. Okay, it really drives everything. Okay, it's the key. Who? And this is, like I said before, who's who in the zoo, the principles, the skill sets and the knowledge gaps. Now, this is where you bring in my old mate, brutal honesty, and slip the leash and let him run around for a while. Okay, when it comes to your skill sets and your knowledge gaps. Point number 1, you don't know everything. Point number 2, that's cool because you don't have to know everything. Okay, you just need to be good at the bit that you do and bring in people to fill the gaps. Okay, there's knowledge gaps, there's skills gaps that you don't have. That's fine, you can outsource that. Co-founders in businesses are as common as chips because it's necessary. Okay, one person cannot do everything and does not do everything. Right? If that was the case, there'd be no accountants or solicitors in the world. Right? Legal structure. Now, don't just talk to your accountant with respect to all the accountants in the world. Have a chat to your solicitor as well. Talk about the risks that are in business and understand the risks that are there and put in place the appropriate structure. I won't say don't, although I probably should, but seriously reconsider operating as a sole trader. Now, I know there's a gazillion sole traders out there. A lot of them are hobby businesses, and for 99% of them, that's fine. Okay. But if you're talking about having a serious business, you're dealing with the public, you're in retail, you're manufacturing, something like that, have a good talk to a solicitor about your structure so that your assets are protected and that you're protected and the risks can be mitigated with insurance. All right. I've had a couple of clients where they're operating in the construction industry as sole traders because they were just a little business to start with and their accountant said it'd be nice and easy. They didn't need to do anything else fancy and spend money on companies and stuff. And now they're turning over serious coin and converting them and actually corporatizing that and putting some trusts in place and actually protecting the assets is a major pain in the butt. Right? There's some tax implications. It's just horrible. And we could have avoided all of that at the start by setting up a structure that would deal for the long-term growth of the business. Remember I said, start the way you intend to continue. Right? And here's where you do that. In this section where you're setting up legal structure, mentors and advisors. And I'll talk a bit more about that later. And again, I'll talk more about it tomorrow. But generally, there's a third party. Okay. Husbands and wives as mentors. It's rare, and it's rare that it works. Okay. You want impartial, objective advice. Now, one of my best mentors and advisors is a very close friend of mine. We've been mates for a long time. But when I get advice from him, it's pretty cold and down the line. Okay, he's been in business for a long time. He's got the runs on the board, and you got to listen to the guy. You just do. And vice versa. When he asks me for advice, despite the fact that we've been mates for years, if he's doing something that I don't agree with, and I have some pretty sound reasons, you can bet your bottom dollar it's going to be a pretty strong discussion about why he shouldn't do what he's doing, or why a certain course of action is a smarter way to go. We've had a couple of those conversations recently, and it's not so much about getting people to change direction. It's just opening their eyes up to what the consequences might be of where they're going and what a better way to go might be. And they can then make the choice, right? And it may be that they know things they're not telling me about, or that your mentors are providing advice that doesn't really apply to your scenario because they don't quite understand what you're doing, in which case you need to get another mentor. You need to get somebody who really gets where you're at, so their advice is in tune with your ideas and your business. Okay. But it's important to get them. Okay, and chambers of commerce are a great place to find them. Incubator hubs, co-working spaces. You'll be surprised where you bump into people who have the skill set to help you and are willing to do so. Right? It's not as uncommon as you might think. How? Production, finance, marketing, admin, culture, people, all that stuff. All right, the really boring, grinding, nitty-gritty bits of business. Right, your operations. How are you going to do it? This is where you start mapping out how you're actually going to produce your good or your service and deliver it to the customer, whether you're doing it on a wholesale or a retail basis, exporting, whether you're an import, wholesale, whatever, it doesn't matter. This is where you map out how you're going to do it. And your timelines, okay, for each stage. Okay, now admittedly, you're halfway through. Stage 2 out of 4, well, stage 2 out of 4, I guess, is halfway, but you're nowhere halfway on timelines. But this is where you map them out and you really start to focus on your exit. And then we come back up the page to structure. And when it comes to exit, don't forget, when you're talking to your solicitor and your accountant about structure, talk to them about how you want to get out. Okay, or ask them for advice on how you can sell at the end of the day. Right? Unless you are that rare person who wants to die in the office, in which case doesn't matter that much, does it? Really. So this is where you tap in your network. All right. You have a look at your competition. And as I said before, you will be surprised, okay, at how many successful business people will simply share their advice, even their contacts, where you've got the resolve, you've got the belief to ask for help, all right? And you've got a total commitment to your idea. Like you're all in. then people will come along and they will help. Okay, if you're a bit wishy-washy, if you just want, a bit of a free kick, good luck. You probably won't get the same response. I'd be very surprised if you get the same response. But if you have that commitment, you've got that belief, and you're delivering a great solution to a known problem, people will come along for the ride. They'll help you, and they'll give you some advice, because everybody wants you to succeed. Not so much your competitors, I guess that's not quite everybody, but when you're in the wider business community, they want you to succeed. Okay, have a crack, son. You go, girl. They want you to win. So they'll help. If they've got some advice and you're asking for it and you're legitimately wanting their help, they'll put their hand up. It'll happen. Okay. So making the magic happen. So we've got our structure mapped out, our legal structure that we're going to operate within. We know what we're going to do in that structure. We know why we're doing it, and that rules everything. The why is the one ring that rules them all. Okay. We know who's going to be doing it. Right, we've got our principals, we've got our advisors, we've brought in some experts, we've got a couple of co-founders, we've got the structure with the people set up, we've got the production line ready to roll from start to finish, and we know the timelines. So, well, what are you waiting for? Let's go. All right, open up. So yeah, it gets real right now. Okay, now it starts. There are no shortcuts. It will take the time and effort it requires. Yes, it's not a job. Okay, you don't get to start at 9 and knock off at 5. And give you a very, and not everybody gets that. Okay, they don't sweat it when your mates don't quite understand the time involved, right? The long hours. Okay, for a couple of years, I actually ran a coffee van, which we turned into a catering business. And when I first kicked it off, a couple of friends of mine said, so basically you start at about 7 or 8 serving coffee, and then you knock off at lunchtime and go home. It's like, yeah, no, not really. It's not quite like that. It's more like get up at 6, out the door by about 6:30, 7:15, serving the first coffee about 7-ish. And then I just simply don't stop until about 1:30, 2 o'clock, because I mean, after lunch, no one really wants a coffee in the industrial estates and the office parks. They're not that interested. So wind it up, go home by about 2:30 or so, 3 o'clock at the latest. Clean up the van, reorder anything that's running out, pack it up for tomorrow, wash it down, make sure it's all Mickey Mouse. So that's run through to about 5. So yeah, they're sort of, they're 10-hour days, something like that, sort of 9, 10-hour days. And then you got weekend stuff. And that was just a little coffee van. Now that grew. Spot my best efforts, we turned that into a good little business, and then exited out of that. Pretty much on the timeline when we thought we would. I ran it a little longer than we were going to, because I simply, the demand was there, and we could fit in with what other things we were doing. But that was a classic example of there were no shortcuts. Okay, there are absolutely no shortcuts in that sort of business. When you're serving food to people, there are no. You got to do it the same way every time, and you don't do the whole 9 to 5 thing. It doesn't work like that. So anyway, we're in production. Yay. All right. Now this is where you're going to get tested, right? Your resilience, your commitment, your sheer willpower. All right. This will be tested every day. I'll guarantee you. All right. And if you're working in the business now, you will know that, because you will see it around you all the time. Cool. When you buy the business, mate, I guarantee you it'll crank up by another factor of 2. All right. Because everything's on the line. All right. And you've got people to deal with, internally, externally. It's happy days. Okay. Now, the timeline for the production phase will take what it takes. Actually, I think I said that before. If it's a project-based business, right, you're simply going in, providing a solution as a one-off or a two-off, and then you're out. That may simply be months. All right. Maybe a very short timeline for the business. But usually this is years. Okay. You're in for the long haul, because you're actually generating wealth, you're generating long-term value in the business. So when you exit, you can move comfortably on to the next stage. All right. Now, this is where the why comes into play. This is where the why is so critical, because if you don't have that nailed down, and if you don't have that as the core of your operations and focus on it and make it the hub of everything you do, you're going to burn out. You are literally going to hit the wall, because you won't have You won't have that drive in front of you. You won't have that ultimate motivation keeping you going. So you go right back to the start, the why. Stick it on a poster, stick it on your wall, tattoo it on inside your eyelids, whatever it takes, okay? Keep it in front of you, make it the focus of what you do. All right, now, discipline. All right, now I'm not talking about whips and chains, but I'll tell you what, there's been some times with staff where a bit of a whipping in the good old days didn't go astray. Look, this is where your systems and processes count, right? In all seriousness, okay, it's discipline, it's systems, it's process, because managing your cash flow, you've got to have systems around that. You've got to have good processes to make sure that you're maximizing your cash flow. I spoke about this yesterday. In fact, I went on and on and on about this yesterday. Right, it's the whole point of the webinar. If you missed yesterday's, that's cool. Come back next week. I'll do it again on Tuesday for you. You've got to have repeatable ways of doing things. Your sales processes, they've got to be repeatable. There's got to be a process there to make sure that the same thing is done. So when you're delivering that excellent customer experience, you're doing it again and again and again. All right? Your people, they need a framework to operate within. Okay, there is nothing will destroy your business quicker than having no systems and processes for your people to operate within, no HR process. If you don't have that, if you don't have a structure that guides what you do, how you do, what you're not allowed to do, it will fall apart, because people will start getting ad hoc. They'll start making stuff up as they're going along, and it just won't work. It won't be repeatable. It won't be scalable. It will fail. Okay. Don't guess. When it comes to your cash flow and your sales processes, don't guess. Now, important point. I'm not saying don't improve. I'm not saying don't innovate. I'm not saying don't reinvent. What I'm saying is that you need to find what works, and you would have done a lot of that work before you even open the doors. But you find what works, you document it, so that people walk in, there is a system and a process to how you do things. And then you start improving. Right? And I'll speak a lot about this tomorrow. It's a favorite topic of mine. Okay. You start improving from day one. You look for ways of doing it better. But whilst you're doing that, you've still got your systems and processes in place so that the day-to-day business rolls on the way it should roll on. People are doing what they should do. And you've got that one step back, one step up, looking over the business saying, okay, how can we do it better? Where can we improve? Right. And there's a whole lot of strategies behind that in terms of customer interaction and staff interactions and looking at what your competitors do. But you need that foundation before you can improve. Right? You need to know what it is you're improving, and then you need to make that the new system and process. Okay. So ad hoc's cool in the startup phase. It ain't real cool when you're production. Now, there we go. Improvement. Sorry, I was just going on and on about that because it's a big thing. All right. I'm a big fan of improvement. I love solving problems and making things better. Okay. This is where your performance monitoring is crucial. As I said earlier, you need to have systems and processes so you can sit back and look and find out where things aren't quite working right. Okay. Is there an opportunity to do something better? Is there an opportunity for a new market? Okay, strategies for repeat business. If you want to know about how some easy to implement zero or low cost strategies for repeat business, I will see you tomorrow at, what have I got? 10 o'clock in the morning from memory, maybe 10:30. Tune in this channel, come back. We're going to run through an hour of that, and that is fun. Okay, I love building repeat business. Okay, it's about having customers as advocates. It's the unpaid marketing team. It is the cheapest source of business you can get. That first one, when you're in the production phase, that needs to be a focus of yours. How are you going to do that? Even if you're a one-off purchase, all right, you're a service, you're a solicitor, somebody buys a house through you, you might not see them for another 3, 5, 10, 20 years. You might not even see them until you got their will in front of you. Doesn't matter. You need referral business. Cool. Come and see me tomorrow. We'll spend an hour going through how to do that. Staff turnover, too high or too low. Now, I'll get to the too low in a sec, but too high can be a real issue. And that may be simply because you're recruiting the wrong people, in which case, have a look at your processes. Like, what are you using as a map to pick the right or to find the right employee? Okay. Should perhaps you outsource it? Should you stop outsourcing? Should you bring it back into the company because your outsourcing isn't working? Okay, it's a trigger to improve. Too low. At one stage, for about 6 or 7 years, I ran a franchise, and this franchise ran a lot of training courses for staff, and I would send my staff on every course I could get them into. And the regional manager mentioned once that I must have, some of the best trained staff in the bank. But yeah, well, I'd rather have good, well-trained staff who leave than poorly trained staff who stay. And that's where your too low comes in, where you've got people who simply aren't hitting the mark. Right? So, but they're hanging around and you're not getting rid of them. Systems and processes. Okay. If you've got performance monitoring in place and you know they're not doing the job well enough, start the process to either improve what they're doing or exit them and bring somebody in who's going to do a better job. All right. Inefficient production. Again, spoke about that yesterday, and that will show up in your cash flow. All right. Cash flow is constrained. Production's inefficient. That will show up. We went through a whole heap of ratios yesterday that'll highlight things like that. It's about having systems in place that highlight where you've got issues. Okay. And your competitors are developing better products. You want to be all over that, I can tell you now. Okay. Now, here we come to the end of it. All right. And we've actually got through pretty quick because there's been no questions yet, which is cool. Kind of exit stage left. Now, remember, we planned for this right at the start. So this isn't a surprise. It's not like, oh my God, it's Tuesday, I've just sold the business. Right? It doesn't work like that. Okay. This is where it's time to head for the beach. Right. Truly, this is the most forgotten part of business planning. I don't say that lightly because I see it all the time, all the time. Now, I said this a couple of times, do it at the start. Okay. Set up at the start to exit at the end. All right. So that at least you've got the best chance of a smooth exit and maximizing your return, because that's what it's all about, right? You've added as much value as you can. You're going to get out with as much value as you can. Happy days, all right? You're off to the next challenge, whatever that may be, okay? Now, this is why it's such an issue, is that when you're in business, you spend so much time on the business, and then what time you've got left is for your family and your personal life, and you don't think about how you're going to exit because what you're thinking about is tomorrow's problems, right? I know, been there, done that. Okay, you've got to have a strategy for it. All right, got to have a strategy. Okay, now there's three popular ways, so the most common options. Now I've left out, particularly if you're a startup, I've left out IPO or a public listing. Okay, because they're very much their own beast and certainly not anything we're going to cover off today. Okay, that's a super specialized area. Now, your big three, your trade sale, your family handover, or straight out liquidation, where you're just winding it up and walking away. Now, let's go through trade sale. If this is the route you're going to take, you need to bring in a professional business broker. All right, you're not going to list it yourself. And the reason you're doing that is that they will present your business in the best possible light. It's what they do every day. They know what the prospective purchasers want to see. They know what the market demands. And to be honest, I would actually be talking to these guys right at the start. Right? When you're setting up, I would go to a broker or a couple of them and say, listen, look, this is the idea we're looking at putting in place. At the end of the day, we want to do a trade sale. What sort of things should we be thinking about now in terms of structure, documentation, all that really cool stuff to make the process easy? Get some feedback early, and then when you're getting closer to exiting, bring them back in again and make sure that you're all Mickey Mouse and on track, because you will need clarity around things like your customer base, your record keeping, your cash flow drivers, your systems, your processes. All of that must be nice and clear. Okay, I don't know how many purchases I funded, and I'm just sitting there and go, look, I've got no idea what's going on in the business. How can the vendor have any idea? Like, you're asking me for the money, and I've got no data on customer rates. I've got no data on the state of the finances. I don't know where the debtors and creditors sit, what's happening with stock, no historicals. There's no record. How can you make an informed decision with that little amount of data? Okay. And if you want to be really cool and add some value and make it a pretty smooth process, think about ways the new owner can add value, right? Things that you haven't had the opportunity to implement, okay? Whether it's systems improvements, new product lines, new sales channels. Okay, I had one client of mine who sold out and he had 3 product lines that he was going to bring in. He simply didn't have the resources or really the mental energy. Like, he got to the point where he was going to exit, and just before they got there, they came up with some new product lines. He went, "That's really cool. The next guys can do that." Okay, that's a freebie. Right? And that sale went through like that because not only was the business priced right, all the documentation was there, it was presented well, and there was value add from day one. Okay, so have a look at that. That's always a nice thing to throw in. Now, family handover and buyout, which is really just a variation on trade sale. Okay, only sometimes not as clean. However, can be a lot easier, a hell of a lot easier, particularly if you started early. Get the family involved and you're looking for passion and skills. More the passion, guys, more the why. Okay, it's like I said, it's the hub of everything you do. You can teach skills, right? Skills can be learned, really, unless you're an absolute klutz. You can learn how to do what needs to be done. But if you don't have the passion, then you need to be an employee, not an owner. Simple as that. Okay. Now, if you're going to go down this path, and I've been through a few of these when I was in agriculture, put the succession strategy in place pretty early and stick to it. All right. If there's a date for handover and everything's rolling on nicely to that date, when handover date clicks over, you hand over and you walk away. We've had a couple in the past where mum and dad simply haven't really been able to let go, despite the fact that they've sold the business, kids have taken over, they're going in some new directions, and there's been a bit of friction. All right. And I understand the why in those circumstances. I get it, but that wasn't the deal. And at the end of the day, a deal's a deal, guys. Okay. It's business. All right. So, apart from that, everything previously mentioned, like even if you've got family involved in the business, they may not know as much about it as you think they know. All right. So don't assume, just make sure that everything is lined up, because it's not only a case of making the handover professional and making the sale professional. It's a case of setting it up and showing them how to exit, so that when they want to exit, and that may be to their kids or to a cousin or a simple sale to somebody external, a third party, they've got the systems in place to make that process nice and easy. Okay. Now, liquidation. Now, option of last resort, and I'm not actually talking about bringing in a liquidator. Okay, that's its own little bundle of nightmares. Right? What I'm talking about is where you've got a business. Usually it's around your skill set or it's project based, and the only option really is to simply sell off the bits and pieces and walk away, because if you're not there, there's no business, right? It's that reliant on you, okay? Now, make the plan early, all right? Set it up. And to be honest, I just come back one step, there are actually a few franchises that are like this, where really, if you're not there, the franchise kind of doesn't exist. So maximize the cash you're dragging out of it, all right? Make sure that your investment strategies are cut to the bone, because there's no value to be had at the end of the day in anything you invest in there, okay? So like everything else, have a good hard look when you're setting it up, when you're starting off, and then make your plans such that when you exit, you've maximized your value out of the business, okay? Now, that pretty much winds us up. I'll just finish on one note, or two notes actually, sorry. One, thank you very much to the Australian government for funding all of this for you guys, okay, through AusIndustry and their wonderful people at Business Station and RDA. Secondly, if you get one thing out of today's webinar, okay, one thing about the whole life cycle, the mindset, the planning process, is that the why is key. If you don't have the why, you need to look for where it's at for you. Right? It's probably not where you want to go. Find out why your solution is the solution, why you're doing it. Make that the hub of your planning, hub of your execution, because once you've got that nailed, it makes everything else a lot smoother than it possibly could be. Anyway, thank you very much for your time. I do appreciate your attention. My contact details are there. If you've got any questions specific to your business or even general questions, fire them away. The email works beautifully. And I will hopefully see you tomorrow for some really fun chat around repeat business, customer advocates, and building a marketing team for nothing, pretty much. Cool bananas. Cheers, guys.